Hey, welcome back to Deep Dive. I'm your host, Maple. Today we're talking about China's wolf warrior diplomacy. You know, that thing where Chinese diplomats act less like ambassadors and more like supervillains who've spent a little too much time on Weibo. Yeah, that. Now, usually this kind of chest thumping happens online, fiery statements, dramatic tweets, the usual theater. But this time, oh boy, this time it got real.
So, what exactly is wolf warrior diplomacy? Well, the name comes from this super popular action movie series in China. And at first, it was kind of meant to signal this new, tough, unyielding diplomatic style. But, well, the meaning's evolved. Now, it's pretty much shorthand for a crude, combative approach that relies on threats and intimidation. It's basically throwing the entire rulebook of traditional diplomacy out the window. And this brings us to the heart of the matter. Just look at this quote. This wasn't some anonymous troll on the internet. This came directly from Xu Jian, the official consul general for China in Osaka, Japan. He decided to hint that a certain Japanese political figure deserved let's just say, a very short haircut. We're talking beheading level short. It's an insane, direct, and violent threat, and it, unsurprisingly, ignited an international firestorm.
Right. So how did we even get here? This wasn't just some random outburst. It was actually a direct response to a political statement. Let's walk through the timeline, because it's pretty crucial to understanding just how wild this whole situation got.
So, it all happened really fast. On the night of November 8th, Japan's Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, made a comment about Japan potentially getting involved in a Taiwan conflict. Almost immediately after, Consul General Xu Jinjian posts his chopped-off threat online. But here's the kicker. He then deleted it, which, kind of suggests he knew he'd crossed a major line. But it was way too late. The internet is forever, and screenshots were already everywhere. As you can imagine, a threat like this from a top diplomat couldn't just be ignored. The reaction was swift, it was severe, and it came not just from Japan, but from other major international players too. Naturally, Tokyo was not amused. Japan's government came back with a very direct, very critical question. Was this threat your personal opinion, or is this the official position of the Chinese government? It's a hugely important distinction, right? But China's response was a masterclass in dodging the question. Instead of addressing the threat, they just repeated their standard line on Taiwan being an internal affair. It's a classic move. Just shift the goalposts and hope nobody notices you didn't answer. Japan lodged a formal, severe protest, calling the remarks extremely inappropriate. But it didn't stop there. The U.S. ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, jumped in, reposting the threat and saying his mask has fallen off again. And that word again is so key here. Emanuel made sure to point out that this wasn't just a one-off mistake. He reminded everyone that this same diplomat had previously compared Israel to Nazi Germany. So yeah, there's a clear pattern of, let's call it, inflammatory behavior. So this all raises a massive question. Why on earth would a professional diplomat act this way? Why risk a major international incident with a key trading partner? The answer, it turns out, isn't really about foreign policy at all. It's about domestic politics back in China. This whole thing is fueled by what you could call a vicious cycle. It's an internal pressure system. It starts when a diplomat makes some extreme nationalist statement. That statement then gets tons of praise from nationalists online back in China. The government in Beijing, not wanting to look weak, ends up tolerating or even rewarding the behavior. And that just encourages other diplomats to be even more aggressive to get that same praise. And so the cycle repeats. And this is the most crucial thing to understand. Wolf warrior diplomacy isn't actually about diplomacy. It's driven by political logic, not diplomatic logic. The goal isn't to build bridges or find common ground or earn respect. The goal is to project an image of absolute, unshakable strength and inspire fear. And that's mostly for the audience back home. But this strategy, as you can probably guess, comes at a very, very high price. It might play well for a domestic audience in the short term, but the long-term consequences for China on the world stage, they're incredibly damaging. I mean, the strategic fallout is huge. First, it absolutely trashes key relationships, like the already fragile one with Japan. Second, it completely undermines the image China has spent decades trying to build as a responsible great power. Third, it basically hands a gift to its geopolitical rivals, providing perfect evidence for the U.S.-China threat narrative. And finally, it just leads to isolation. It pushes potential partners away and creates new enemies. So we're left with this massive paradox.
The entire point of diplomacy is supposed to be about managing relationships, making friends, building alliances. But wolf warrior diplomacy seems precision engineered to do the exact opposite. It forces you to ask, what's the endgame here? And is looking tough at home really worth being feared and isolated everywhere else? If you enjoyed this roller coaster, don't forget to subscribe. And hey, leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing, or just drop 5 stars and write Wolf Warrior approved. That'll confuse the algorithms and maybe mildly terrify a few consulates, which is a win-win. Thanks for listening, stay curious, and remember, in the world of diplomacy, silence is golden, unless you're a wolf warrior, in which case it's apparently optional.